Right then folks, let's talk about last week's big money qualifiers. First up, on the Wednesday, was Tunnel Barn Farm. It was a Fishermania qualifier. Now, I've qualified for the Fishermania at Tunnel Barn Farm several years ago, so I thought, might as well have another go. My fishing's changed a little bit though recently. Probably for the last couple of years I don't get to go to Snake Lakes quite as often, so maybe drifted away from that style of fishing, but still felt reasonably confident. Now, I was fortunate enough the Monday before the match to take a chap called Matt, who actually turned out to be a reasonable angler, you know, more than competent, actually take him coaching at Tunnel Barn Farm. So I got a really good insight into how the fish were feeding. Loads of fish were feeding shallow, loads of fish were feeding in the shallow water, and I felt that if I got a reasonable peg, I'd got a chance. I didn't even film the match. The less said about the match, the better. I drew canal peg 3. The whole of canal fished really poor, to be fair, and I think £70 won the lake. Now, nearly £200 won the match. Jamie Hughes, another final for him. So I was never in the running really, and I took my fish back and snuck out of the car park, hoping nobody see me, because it was a pretty poor performance, to be honest. So that's the first one out of the way. Next match, next qualifier was Feeder Masters Qualifier. That was at JCB Lakes. Raring to get into the Feeder Masters final. Didn't get there last year, got there the first year, so I wanted to get there this year. JCB Lakes is somewhere that I used to fish a little bit. I know a little bit about the lakes, and actually Matt, who I took Tunnel Barn Farm, he works at JCB, so he gave me a little bit of an insight into how the lakes were fishing. He told me the pegs to draw. I didn't disappoint him. I drew an absolute flyer, peg 76 on the North Lake. It's right outside the main entrance. Now, for you guys who go Wootton Towers or have ever been Wootton Towers, you drive by and you can see the main entrance of JCB. The peg I drew was right smack in front of those doors. A little island at about 35 metres to chuck to, plus a lot of open water in front of me. Now, I was further boosted when I got to my peg. Loads of fish, pods of fish, probably like 6 and 7 fish in each pod, were cruising around in front of me with the mouths out, waiting, as I was told, for the workers or for the people walking around to chuck some bread in, because the fish seemed to get fed at those particular spots on the bank that I was on, in sort of an area of 4 or 5 pegs. The fish seemed to get fed there, so, you know, a massive confidence boost seeing those fish. Unfortunately, those fish, as soon as the whistle went, just disappeared. No one could get a bite short. No one on my bank were catching any amount of fish. So all I can put it down to is those fish just disappeared as soon as there was a bit of angling pressure on the water. First up for me, tactics-wise, was to fish open water. I knew I'd got this attractive looking island in front of me, but I was pretty sure that if I fished that island straight away, I was going to hopefully catch a couple of fish, but I was sure that I was going to push the fish away from me and round the back of the island, and the chances are they wouldn't have come back. So I wanted to keep that island area for when the fish were a little bit more actively feeding. So I started off in open water. Standard hybrid feeder tactics, mini boiler on the hair, micro pellets around the feeder, and I've cast a hybrid feeder, sort of starting off at 50 metres. The plan was to just creep and go a little bit further each time and bites dried up. As it was, in the first 20 minutes, I've caught a fish. Tips gone round, the bites at JCB are amazing. You feel like your rod's going to get pulled in every time, and I'm playing a fish. Always take my time, especially with the first fish, and especially when the fish are of a big size. And this one, £7, maybe £8. And I would say that is, you know, average size for JCB Lakes. Really nice fish, immaculate condition. The fish in JCB don't get hammered like a lot of places because it is a members only water. We were quite privileged to fish there. But for me, a great start. Second chuck, also caught another fish. A little bit smaller this time, £6. But again, brilliant scrap. No issues, using a size 12 QM1 hook. It took me quite a while to get a next indication, to be fair, and it only came after I'd had a chuck to the island. Now, every time I'd had a chuck in open water, I'd fed a little bit of bait up against the island, so I'd have probably 10-minute chucks in open water. I'd reel in, pick up my short rod, have a quick chuck, empty a bit of bait out up against the island, and then chuck out long again. I just felt that if I could put a little bit of bait then, I was setting it up then for the last couple of hours of the match. 2 hours into the match, I've had a chuck chuck up against this island. It's 35 metres to the island. I've landed the feeder maybe about three metres short. It was very shallow up against the island, so I wanted to get into slightly deeper water, and I was guessing I was chucking into sort of like 3.5, 4 foot of water. It took 10 minutes and I didn't have a single indication, and then out of the blue, bang, the rod's gone round. I felt I was going to lose the rod. I've managed to grab the rod and I'm playing a big fish. I've unclipped. Luckily I'd marked my line where my line clip was. I've unclipped and the fish has gone sort of like 20 metres out. It took me a long time to play that fish. Again, really took my time because I could sense it was going to be a hard day. That fish was a massive bonus. It was double figures. My next fish up against the island was the same size, double figures again, and it was looking like the bigger fish wanted to be in slightly shallower water. So we're looking at 2.5 hours in now and I've got 4 fish. The whole of my 20 peg section, which is how we base the qualifiers on, 2 or 3 fish was best, so I felt I was just nudging in front there, and if I could keep it up, I'd maybe have enough to qualify at the end. Quick few phone calls around, yeah, wasn't fishing very well at all. I think what had happened is the east wind that had sort of dominated the whole weekend had put a massive chill on the water, and fish just don't seem to feed when there's an east wind coming into the country. My next fish took me an age to catch. Again, it was up against the island, and again it was a double figure fish. Again I had to unclip, and again the bite was so ferocious I felt I was going to lose the rod. But now I'd had 3 double figure fish up against the island, 2 slightly smaller ones in open water. I always felt that the island was where I needed to concentrate a lot of my efforts, but after an hour of not getting another bite or a single indication, I was forced to go into open water again, and I was searching for fish. Started going longer and longer and longer, taking another 2 or 3 yards off the clip, and it was when I got to sort of like 75 metres that eventually I've had another bite, and it was a really small fish, sort of like 4.5, 5 pound. A real round fish that looked a little bit abnormal for JCB lakes because it didn't look like the pristine sort of fish that we were used to there, but a welcome bonus nonetheless. That was an hour from the end, that fish, and despite going sort of like 80, 85 metres, 90 metres right at the end, I couldn't get another bite. So I ended up with 6 fish. Fortunately, that was just enough. Michael Buckwalder weighed 45 pound, I weighed 48 pound, got the golden ticket into the Feeder Masters final, so I was absolutely over the moon. Steve Ringer made no mistakes winning the match, and from the other lake, the South Lake, Dan Webb, he won that lake, and he got another ticket to the final as well. So another 2, good feeder anglers in the final. I think it's worth talking about the kit I used, and the kit I generally use now for chucking hybrids and methods feeders a long way. My long distance feeder fishing revolves around these rods now. These rods are from Free Spirit. This is the highest power feeder, it's 12 foot. And for method feeder and hybrid feeder work at places like Boston, Boddington, JCB lakes, sort of that 60 metres to 90 metre work, these are absolutely brilliant. Don't get me wrong, they cost a lot, but sometimes you have to fork out a little bit of money to get the best. The reason that they're good is because they've got loads of power. They're dead light, they've got loads of power, but importantly, when you're playing a fish, it's a beautiful action. You just get hardly any hook pulls with them. So this is the highest power feeder. It's 12 foot long, it's 2-piece, which helps massively when you're putting them down into your rod bag. And with the big eyes, the hollow tips, it's just a beautiful rod for chucking any amount of distance with. Now, you can't have a good rod without a good reel. Long distance chucking is just as much about the reel as it is the rod. I'm using a Daiwa Castism. Nice big spool, loads of winding power, line peels off that spool effortlessly when you're chucking, and it makes so much difference. You can see there that I've got the line filled up to the brim, and that's 5 pound MIDI M-Tech line as a main line. And then I've got a shock leader on that of 10 pound. There's no point using 6 and 8 pound shock leaders. You might as well go the full hog and use a 10 pound shock leader. After all, it's going to take loads of hammer, and I want the confidence there that if I really need to give that a big whack, I'm not going to crack off. This weekend is the Ring of Eights 2-day Fair Meadows Classic. Sunday and Bank Holiday Monday. It's always a good crack. There's usually a few fish to be caught, although Feeder Masters hasn't been fishing that great this year. I'm hoping this warmer weather would have woke a few bream up. So wish me luck, and hopefully I've got some good news next time.